stories about water and urban places. This is Ideanthro. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro, and welcome back to Front of Mind Season 1. This series where we nab ourselves a guest from our broader water or stormwater industry and sit down with them to have a chat about what's interesting them, fascinating them, maybe even puzzling them at the moment. Our guest today comes to us from the Netherlands. Our guest is Floris Boogaard. Once again, I hope I'm doing an okay job of that. Floris, welcome along.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So if you haven't seen Floris' previous episode on Ideanthro, Floris is a professor from the Netherlands, has done a lot of research into past and sustainable urban drainage systems, which is, I suppose, a European, particularly a UK name for, but a European name for kind of the equivalent to water-sensitive urban design. And recently, Floris has been doing some research into swales, which, am I right in thinking they're called whiteys in the Netherlands? Is that the right term? Whiteys, yep. Yeah. Swales, and particularly how quickly the water drains away from them, which is really relevant on Ideanthro because in episode 213, we were talking about emerging research about how bioretention systems disappear far more water than we previously thought. And on a very recent episode of Ideanthro, in fact, unreleased at the time that Floris and I are speaking right now, Alan Hoban and I had a chat about the implications of this research and some other recent research. So this is very topical. So without further ado, Floris, do you want to give us, where do we get into this? Where do we get into this research? What is it? Why does it interest you?
Yeah, well, my work is basically mostly in the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands there are a lot of doubts on infiltrating with swales or permeable pavement. Mm-hmm. And of course probably everybody is aware that we live below sea level, most of the country, up to almost 10 meters below. So most of the western part of the Netherlands is having very high groundwater tables, up to 50 centimeters under the ground. And there's a lot of clay soil, so a very low permeability. So there's a lot of doubts by municipalities and water authorities to implement sustainable urban drainage systems. And I think, well, what I saw from monitoring, that it's actually the swales or the permeable pavement are functioning quite well. And because of this worst case scenario what we have on the groundwater table, low permeable soil, I did some research, mostly on permeable pavement, and the latest is really on swales. So I flooded in the low-lying parts of the Netherlands about 30 swales, full scale, so totally submerged. The maximum height is mostly 30 centimeters, and I found that actually all the swales that we researched were empty within 2 days, which is quite fast if you consider the special circumstances that we have. So that's quite positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the question that I am dying to know, and this applies to both the bioretention research that Alan has dug up, and then for this research as well, is where do you feel the water's going? I'll let you answer that, then I'll explain the context as to why because you might be sitting there going, well, that's fairly obvious, Jack, it's such and such, but give me your answer, then I'll explain why that's fascinating me.
Yeah, well, where the water is going, mostly in the Netherlands, it really depends. The swales are different. Some are filled with a bit of sandy soil on the top, so sometimes it goes a bit faster. But I'm really interested in basically low-lying grassy fields that don't have a lot of infrastructure underneath it. So sometimes even no drainage pipes or anything at all. Because I find that the most sustainable, that's the most nature-based, etc. So, and that's basically what surprised me, that the water would go so fast in the ground. And at those fields, mostly what I found is that the vegetation, if it's really growing quite fast, and you only have 30 centimeters, that there's actually a lot of storage room in the ground itself, especially if it's dry, so the water could infiltrate, especially if it's only 30 centimeter, which is not a lot. Then there's quite some space for the water to infiltrate to deeper layers. So
okay. So you're thinking field capacity, soil infiltration. So the reason that I want to ask this is we've got these papers emerging about bioretention systems, which obviously are a little bit different because a lot of the ones in these papers are lined. They have a very sandy soil that's up to 500 mils or even more deep with some gravel beneath. So there's clearly a lot of storage capacity in them. And we're seeing the volumetric losses vary a fair bit between them, but the papers have been identified averaging out around 60% of the water going into them never comes back out the under drainage pipes. Now there is a fair bit of variation between systems there, but what's really fascinating is a lot of the systems that have had that monitoring done, that hydrologic monitoring done, have actually their primary purpose of the monitoring has been for pollutant removal. So we've also got pollution removal values. And in my opinion, if you stick together what we know about how pollutant removal, and if anyone wants a more detailed explanation of this, go to episode 213. But if you stick together what we know about pollutant removal in the lab and the way lab scale systems with no volumetric losses, or very, 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 very little volumetric losses filter out pollutant, and you stick it together with the results from the field that show similar load reductions in pollutant, but also the volumetric reduction, it seems to me like the logical conclusion for bioretention systems is that they are evapotranspiring a large proportion of this water that disappears, like far more than a standard crop factor, a bit of calculation would suggest they should be. So I'm curious as to your thoughts on that and whether you've considered that in the context of your swales or...
Of course, we have to consider the different climates that we have in the Netherlands.
Of course.
We rarely have high temperatures or long dry periods as you would have. But especially in the summer, you can quite lose quite some millimeters of water on evapotranspiration. So that's really something that's a large difference between the lab results and the field. Could go up to more than 10 millimeters, of course, in a day already. So, but still, for the research in the Netherlands, I mean that would be a couple of centimeters after 30 centimeters. So still, most of the water should go into the soil and will be infiltrating. But that's a very interesting thought.
Yeah. How does the amount that you're losing compare to, when you saw how quickly it drained away, or maybe actually rephrase that, when you were about to do the research and you were looking at the sorts of soils that you had, did you expect it to drain away that quickly, or did it surprise you?
Yeah, it was surprising for me because I'm quite positive on infiltrating in the low-lying parts because, I'm working on this more than 20 years now. But especially because a lot of people are quite negative on the possibilities of in this worst-case scenarios, infiltrating. I was quite, even for me, really surprised that in some circumstances that you really have groundwater up to 20 or 30 centimeters under the soil that you're actually infiltrating in.
Yep.
And at clay soils in the southern part of the Netherlands, that's really clay. It's a delta, and still it would infiltrate within 2 days. That's quite surprising for me as well. Yeah, and mostly what I found is that if the grass. The grass or the vegetation is quite a big part of that.
Okay.
If you have a good vegetation, there's a lot of bio life in the topsoil that can infiltrate a lot. But I found also that in some locations, because the testing is mostly done in dry circumstances and mostly in pleasant circumstances, so mostly the summer. When you get a tank truck out, and I mostly do it with young professionals as well, these testing, so mostly are done in the summer. And of course then you have a really dry and beginning situation that's quite positive on infiltration.
Yeah.
So the latest research that I've done is actually repeating the full-scale test.
Yep.
So after it's not even totally empty, I will do it again and do it again. And then I found that the infiltration capacity could be, if it's saturated, it takes quite a longer time.
Right.
So so the first time, for example, you would have an empty time of 2 hours. It would go really quickly.
Yeah.
But the second time, it would more than double. And if you do it the third time, it could be really up to 1 day or something. So it really goes up.
So this is
empty time of a swill, and that's quite interesting for the Netherlands, because we don't model that in models basically.
Yeah.
Mostly we have only one permeability in your models, and this could lead to an overestimation of the water that would infiltrate.
Yeah.
Lead to maybe floodings even if you don't calculate that with the model.
Yeah, exactly. And this is exactly what I'm considering in Australia, because I'm really interested in the bioretention research. I know I'm making a non-like for like comparison here, but it's the context with which this is making sense to me. But I'm really interested in it because, with 60% volumetric losses showing up, that's possibly profound enough to mean we could install smaller pipes in, for the minor drainage system, for the small storm events in new urban areas, or potentially install rain gardens in lieu of pipe upgrades, very much like some of the systems that I saw in July when I was over, and when you pointed me towards some stuff, and when Lot took me to some stuff in Amsterdam as well. And that really interests me because, of course, maybe I'm wanting to build a rain garden for pollutant removal or environmental purposes, but if it can offset some flood, some stormwater drainage costs, then that's great for me, right? Because it offsets the cost of building what can be quite an expensive system.
Yeah.
But of course, the big question, or the big assumption that's made in flood management or stormwater management in Australia is our pipes will restore their capacity very soon after a storm event. You essentially have to have a storm event that has to drain out, and you have to have capacity very, very soon again, because we can get these really heavy, intense, it's rained in the past day or so. Yeah, context for people listening to this, right? I essentially can't have a chat with Floris without it raining on us, right? You remember last time we filmed? So, Floris, how long was it since we stopped filming that it started raining?
A couple of seconds.
So we got very lucky.
Yeah, as we're recording this right now, we've just had a couple of 100 mils in Brisbane in several days, and we had to delay this chat for an hour because it stormed and I couldn't possibly record any audio in it. But of course, we need to have anything that we're implementing for a drainage purpose, we need to have it be able to deal with these big rainfall events, and then the fact that we might get a massive storm the next day because our rainfall pattern is not small and consistent, it's large, intense and inconsistent. So this research, so you're starting to dabble into the, I suppose, loading systems time and time again. And you're seeing the infiltration rate slow down. You quoted a couple of different times for me. You said the first time you load a system, it might take a couple of hours to go away, but then it slows down. And then early in the chat, I think, and if you didn't tell me otherwise, but I think you mentioned 2 days. So is it a case when a system's got really good dry conditions initially, a couple of days to drain down? A couple of hours to drain down. And then what, after a few loadings, a couple of days? Is that the sort of space you're in?
Yeah. So it really goes up. So meaning that all the testing that I'm doing, mostly I start with the initial phase that it has been dry for 2 days. It didn't rain. But I found out that, that it might be that if you want to do more accurate testing, that you have to maybe wait longer, or because the initial conditions of your swale or permeable pavement really is a very important factor when you're doing the testing, and it quite surprised me. Of course, it doesn't surprise if you would flood it again, it would get slower. But really, if it's saturated, and it might be something that's a bit on the Dutch side, because we have the groundwater table and if it's only 50 centimeters under the ground, and you will fill 30 centimeters and 30 centimeters again, of course you flooded the whole swale. That would be different in New Zealand or Australia.
For sure.
For that case.
Although it's a little, I think if someone wants to picture this on a small scale, if anyone's ever done hydraulic conductivity testing of, say, a bioretention system where you stick a PVC ring in the ground and fill it and let it drain down and keep refilling it, you'll know that the first time you fill it, it drains away really quickly because it's all getting out the bottom and heading sideways. But then once you wet down the surrounding soil, then it starts to slow down and eventually stabilizes to what you consider to be the real saturated hydraulic conductivity.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe it's good to mention as well why, because I did the infiltrometer test, which is the double ring.
Yes.
That you measure in the middle ring.
Yep.
But I found out that actually it's quite inaccurate or not representative for the whole swale.
Yep.
Because if you would move the rings like only 1 meter or something, you could have a factor 10 different or 100. So that's why I basically fill whole swales.
Yep.
Because it's more accurate and it's a bit and that's why, because I think with the ring, if you would fill it again on the same spot, it might, it still has a lot of room to flow away the water. But if you fill a complete swale, that's a bit more difficult, of course, because you wet the whole swale area in this case. And thinking of this, of course, Netherlands is a bit different than Australia and New Zealand. Actually, because I'm quite fascinating how SADs work in different climates. We can maybe even go more worst case, and it will be Norway or Scandinavian countries where they don't have a lot of SADs yet, but there are quite some rainwater gardens now implemented in Sweden and even Norway.
Oh, right.
And there's one rainwater garden for a project called INXS, so Innovation for Extreme Climate Events, where we compare things in Norway to in Romania and in the Netherlands. And actually even the same conclusions that you have and I have, that in Norway they were really quite surprised on the amount of water they could actually infiltrate in frozen soil.
Yeah, right.
So we might
and surely, surely my evapotranspiration hypothesis doesn't hold in Norway in a frozen cold climate. Surely not. Maybe. I don't know. Huh. That's fascinating.
I really want to do more research on this, and Skating was so positive, but what are the factors? And of course, because there's a large variation of swales. Even there was one municipality, one district that had a lot of swales, and they were constructed in the same way. You could say that the geohydrologic circumstances are, of course, in the district the same, but still they showed quite a difference in empty time of the swales, which fascinates me as well, because that's a whole swale. That's not an infiltrator ring that you move on 1 meter, but you would expect that they would have similar results, but still there was a difference in a couple of hours, or maybe even a factor of 2 or 3.
Well, and
that's fascinating as well.
Yeah, and that's the same as like these papers that Alan has dug up, where I'm going to get the numbers wrong. Like, even though they average out at 60% volumetric losses, I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that some of them vary from like 30 to 80%. And so, what's causing that variation? We just don't know.
Yeah. Because it's the same ground that you use. I mean, the constructors, there will not be a lot of difference. And I think it's probably to do with the biolife, or the maybe the worms and the secondary infiltration rate that you could find with large pores, or the vegetation that has a lot of roots, but then again the vegetation is more or less the same. But it's quite interesting to look at it, because I would expect, doing the research with permal pavement can show a lot of variation.
Right.
And that's because the use is different, and the grid between the stones, or the gaps. There's so many variations, But if you have a low grassy field, which basically is a swale, and you have 3 of them in the same district, I would expect to have a more stable infiltration rate.
Yeah.
But still, it's quite variable. Yeah.
It so 2 things spring up. One, another potential, just kind of throwing out ideas. Another potential source of variation I can see is there's a very common what's the word I want, like kind of scenario, I guess, that plays out in Australia where when you get a rain garden that's, you know, been established, got all these lovely native plants in it, and then obviously we have lots of issues with, you know, invasive weeds getting into systems, and so people end up doing weed control in them. Where people go and accidentally use too much herbicide and end up overspraying and killing off some of the more sensitive species, you see a very common kind of typology where you get the occasional really resistant plant. It's a lomandra for any Australian viewers. You get the occasional lomandra and then spare ground around it, and that spare ground where it's been sprayed with herbicide bakes on really, really hard, even though it's quite a sandy soil, so it should be quite soft to the touch. It goes baked hard. It's really hard to kick your feet into it. But then if you go to a similar system with a really similar soil that's still got much more of its vegetation, or which has some trees dropping leaf litter into it, you go and kick, you scrape back the leaf litter, you kick the same soil, and it's soft and fluffy and light and hasn't baked on hard. So there's elements of that at play that tie into the vegetation as well, I would suspect. Have you come across thinking of, again, where the water's going in variation, have you come across the research from, it's from Villanova Uni, Bridget, and her last name starts with W. Anyway, some researchers out of Villanova Uni who've installed what's the word I want? A lysimeter, a weighing lysimeter in a bioretention system to essentially monitor water content changes within the soil over time. Because that's quite interesting, because they've got some data on evapotranspiration losses out of rain gardens out of that, which might be of interest as well. Yeah, no, I don't know the research, but that's maybe we should do more on evapotranspiration. That's for sure. And they've I'm pretty certain they did some swale. I think they've got some data for swales as well. So I'll flick that to you offline.
Yeah.
So okay, so where do you want to take this research next before we wrap this up and come to a conclusion? Like, where are you looking at taking this?
Yeah, well, I'm happy with the research results to start. I mean, I'm really happy to show municipalities and water authorities that you actually can infiltrate in a worst case scenario in the Netherlands. That's great. I proved that it is within the guideline of infiltrating within 2 days, which is fantastic. But it leaves me still with a puzzle that I cannot rhyme some of the locations having a lower permeability than others.
Yeah.
So as we discussed, I think there's still research to be done. Maybe you should more look at other factors like evapotranspiration, or maybe the BioLife or the vegetation, or there's so much difference that could cause these differences. So I think that's probably what's going on next. I'm going to do more research on optimizing swales that were close to 2 days. How can you, with little measures to upgrade the infiltration capacity, for example? That will be quite interesting. And maybe compare it more to international guidelines, but also research results, like I'm doing now with the rainwater gardens in Norway. What are the factors there? Maybe we can learn from that, and maybe some of the research that you have been telling. I mean, that will be, getting all the information across, and maybe find out more on the details of the infiltrating and the repeating of the filling of the swales. That's something I want to do as well. So what are the factors if you flood it again? How much will the infiltration capacity? How does it vary in time? For example, I think that's very important. Variation for modelers that now just say the permeability is just one value, but probably are not aware. Well, the models are not aware of the spatial variation of that. So I think that's quite important for the research that I want to focus on.
Yeah, cool. I like it. There's plenty of ideas. I would love to see similar research happening on our rain gardens in Australia. So I like it. There's some ideas that we can take from that and hopefully put into practice. Well, yeah.
I'm planning maybe a trip in July.
Oh, wonderful.
By the way, Australia. It's still not confirmed, but maybe we can do some floodings up there.
Yeah, for sure. And let me know if you're coming. I'm happy to show you around. And if there's an opportunity to flood some rain gardens, we can do it.
Great.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, look, thank you for taking the time to have a chat. I really appreciate it. If anyone wants to know either more about this research or for some reason contact you, like where should people go to find out about either this or you? What's the best options?
Yeah, the best option, probably all my research I put on open source web-based international knowledge exchange forum, which is www.climatescan.nl. That's where there's a agenda with permal pavement and swales. If you push that and you go to the Netherlands, you will see most of the research that I've been doing, including some time lapse, so you can see how the water will infiltrate. I can send you some Jack as well. Maybe you can mix it in, or maybe make some links to it.
Yep. So
and of course I'm on ResearchGate and LinkedIn, where I publish most of my new research.
Okay, wonderful. That's great. Look, thank you for taking the time to have a chat. I appreciate it. Thank you as always, everyone, for listening in, and we will catch you next time.
Okay, thanks, Jack.
Cool. See you later.
Before you go, our best episodes come from your questions. This knowledge base, these discussions that are Ideanthro, improve with your contribution. So if there's a topic, an idea, a concept that you would like us to explore, come and ask us. You know where to find us. www.ideanthro.com/contact. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and that place you get your good podcasts from. You know where to find us. We look forward to hearing from you. We'll see you soon.